Oh. Can he even drink wine on Invisalign? I don't know. I'm doing it anyway. So attractive. I don't know how long this is gonna fucking take to edit. And my sister said I will probably regret this. But since when did I ever fucking listen to anybody? La la la. Right, I just got home from having dinner with a bunch of Filipinos for my sister and one of her friends' joint birthday thing, and I have spoken Tagalog, and I am a cocktail and this much bottle of wine deep. So I'm gonna keep drinking this wine, but I think I am primed to talk about this episode that is giving me anxiety. I've been doing my part. 18. I've been doing my part to promote SB19 in Scotland. I'm just saying. I've asked the people that we were with, we were about, I don't know how many we were, but we were quite a few from all over Scotland, well, all over Glasgow, all from kind of different parts of the Philippines. Some of them speak Bisaya, which is great. But yeah, I've been asking them if they know SB19. Unfortunately, none of them do, but I have been telling them about dam dropping, and yeah, hopefully some of them do end up listening, fingers crossed. Also, I heard that Beanie are going to be in London, so I'm partial to boy groups. My sister is partial to girl groups, and I'm hoping to maybe get tickets for me and my sister to go see Beanie in London, because that would be fucking fantastic. Anyway, yeah, I'm a bit buzzed, and I have spent 3 hours kind of speaking Filipino Taglish to people, and I think because I heard some Bisaya tonight, I think it's about time to do this stupid episode. So, point of order, it's been causing me anxiety because I feel like I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to someone's culture. So this is going to be an episode using the interview of Ken from SB19, using that as a jumping off point to have a conversation about just different languages in the Philippines, different cultures in the Philippines, different regions in the Philippines. And as someone who only has experience growing up in Quezon City / Valenzuela, because that's where my dad is from, and being able to speak Hiligaynon and the dialect Karaya because of my mum and like that side of the family, but predominantly as someone who kind of like grew up in Scotland, I don't feel like I'm qualified to even be saying things about this because like I'm so far removed from it. But I've done my due diligence and consulted with my cousins. I asked them if Ilonggo is even part of like the whole Bisaya culture, and they said, thankfully, that it is sort of, it's kind of like a square versus rectangle situation, I guess. So Ilonggo falls under the Bisaya culture, but it's not, like Bisaya culture is like bigger than that. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. I don't know what's happening. Again, I'm just going to keep drinking this bottle of wine until I'm finished, and hopefully I will get through what I want to say by the time I finish the bottle of wine. Also, my head fucking hurts. My sister said it's cute. I guess I'm cute, but my head fucking hurts, man. Also, what a nice change from me just looking like a fucking gremlin. Work from home life, eh? So, I'm gonna assume that people have watched the episode of KuanOnOne with Ken, and I believe the host is called Melai. I'm gonna assume that everyone's watched that. I'm not gonna go over it again, except for kind of like a couple of different points I find interesting. I'm also going to refer to my notes that I've mentioned before. I don't know why I have so much shit to say about this. So another qualification of mine, why I feel like this is a topic that's particularly close to my heart, I guess, is because I have had experience being an ambassador for a government initiative between the UK and Germany. When I was teaching in Germany for the second time round, I did a cultural exchange program with my pupils that I was teaching. So I did 2 projects with a younger school group and an older school group, just kind of doing cultural exchange between their counterparts in England. So it's kind of like I was the British in Germany correspondent, and then my counterpart was a German in Britain correspondent. So I've had experience in doing cultural exchanges. I think that gives me enough qualification to talk about culture. Also, I speak, as I mentioned in so many of my previous videos, I speak all sorts of different languages, and I can kind of think about language as part of cultural identity. So me being able to speak languages has kind of dictated how I view the world and how I interpret things.
That's so fucking pretentious.
Anyway, so this interview, it was such a fun interview, first of all because the host is so funny. I love her so much. She reminds me of a cross between Graham Norton and Alan Carr, I guess. in the UK, if we're going to think about it in UK terms. She's so funny, she's so genuine, she's so warm, and I really feel like her personality and just the warmth that she has in her interview style really allows people to just be comfortable. And also with them speaking their like quote unquote own language kind of adds that level of comfort as well. Yeah, so one of the questions that jumped out to me while I was watching this interview is, with the Philippines being such a diverse country linguistically, I believe there's about, 100 plus languages present in the Philippines. I think I calculated it to be about a different language per 40 or 60 islands. I can't remember my calculation. With that fact, why is it that when someone asks somebody if they speak Filipino, why is it automatically assumed that it's Tagalog that they're referring to? I just think that's... I know that Tagalog is like lingua franca in the Philippines, but like, why is that? Who decided that? Tagalog is a good language, don't get me wrong. You know, I speak it, and again, I appreciate it a lot, but with me speaking Hiligaynon as well, like, I know that Hiligaynon has such a different like texture to Tagalog, and it's more like onomatopoeic, and I don't know how to explain it. It's more playful, it's got more... what's the word? It's got more intonation to it. It kind of like really thick Glaswegian has a sing-songy quality to it. But yeah, it's just like, what makes Tagalog superior to all of these other different languages in the Philippines? I just wondered. So in the interview, Ken discusses his experience growing up in Zamboanga, which is great because I don't think, based on what I can remember watching on the telly in the Philippines when I was young, I don't think, it might be different now, but I don't think you get a lot of these like regional experiences kind of being shared to like the mainstream. So I think that's fascinating, and that's definitely much needed. And also he shares about, so he apparently was raised by his grandparents and his family were abroad working. So while I can't personally relate to that, I know that this kind of like OFW parent kind of experience is something that a lot of Filipinos can relate to. Must be. Because there's quite a lot of OFWs, or just like, I don't know, the Philippine diaspora is wild. Like, when I lived in Germany for the first time round, and I was really sad that I couldn't just go home and ask my stepdad to make sinigang, there was this little Asian shop 2 streets away from my flat, and going in there, the lady was Filipino and she even had kangkong, and I was like, fuck yeah, I want it. And yeah, I had my fix of sinigang. Anyway, so it's something that a lot of Filipinos can relate to, and we need to hear more stories like that, I think. Or I personally would love to hear more stories like that, just because I think it's really valuable to hear stories not just from the Manila region predominantly, because the Philippines, there's so many islands, there's so many, again, languages, there's so many people experiencing all sorts of shit that we kind of, I think we really need to hear more diverse stories so we can find a common thread about what makes us Filipino. I say we, I'm speaking in my Filipino self at the moment. It's also kind of a great advert, I guess, for, you know, how resilient and how deeply ingrained, like, family culture is within the Philippines, hearing these stories. The next section that I found super duper interesting is when they were discussing the difference between the Ken/Philippe persona. So what I've noticed, and also what he actually discusses in the interview, is that, as I guess Philippe is his solo name, he deliberately chooses, or it's a deliberate decision for him to use Bisaya in his like personal solo music. And as someone who loves languages, this is precisely the kind of regional/cultural expression that I'm drawn to. And not just because I have knowledge of the Bisaya culture, but in general, I think it's just a really important thing, especially for artists. Artists use whatever medium they can to kind of express themselves, express their lived experience, and language is a tool to kind of facilitate that. So him kind of like explicitly acknowledging that it's a deliberate choice, it's something that it's a medium that he feels he can express his genuine self a little bit more, is just super cool. And also, like, thinking about it in UK terms, I know I did, like, Lewis Capaldi kind of, like, lyrical analysis, but if you listen to Lewis Capaldi when he talks, and also when he sings, he sounds so Scottish sometimes that it's clear where he's from.
Up in the club, just broke up, I'm doing my own little thing. You decided to dip, but now you want a trip, because another brother noticed me.
Not just the country where he's from. It's also, like, his accent is very, like, Central Belt Scotland, that you can kind of assume that, for me anyway, I can kind of assume that he went to a similar school as I did. He probably had a lot of, like, similar experiences as I did, and that, as a music fan, allows me to kind of connect with the artist a little bit more. And also, like, let's think about other UK artists as well. Like, Arctic Monkeys, very Sheffield.
Well, what a scummy man. Just give him half a chance, I bet he'll rob you if he can.
Spice Girls.
I'm Jerry.
Hi, I'm Victoria.
Hello, I'm Melanie B.
Hello, I'm Emma.
Hiya, I'm Melanie C.
They have different personalities, they have different accents, and obviously that's part of, like, their shtick. Even, like, you know, I love the Beatles. Even the Beatles, they're from Liverpool. When they do interviews, when they talk, maybe not so much in their music, because their music is, when they sing, they basically get rid of their accent. But the way they express themselves, or the way they represent themselves within the global scene is very, like, we are Scousers.
I thought it just sounded distinguished, like George Harrison, the Scouse of distinction.
If that makes sense. Even, like, London. So London, we have Adele. Adele, very, very Cockney.
Sorry I can't be with you tonight. I'm in LA rehearsing for the Oscars.
Adele's got such a strong accent when she does interviews, and sometimes, occasionally when she sings, she has it as well. But, like, compare that to Dizzy Rascal, who is also from London, but he sounds different to Adele because of the way he speaks, the way he uses language, the way he puts it in his music.
I wake up every day is a daydream. Everything in my life ain't what it seems.
It's so distinct that you can kind of tell they had similar grow-ups, but they have distinct kind of, like, philosophies, I guess. London people, feel free to correct me on this, but I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, like, it's just interesting to think about it in UK terms. I don't know if anyone can follow my way of thinking, but again, I think it's super cool. It's kind of like, in the Philippines we have loads of different languages. In the UK, because we're such a stupid monolingual country, the way the Philippines uses language, it's kind of similar to the way we use accents in expressing kind of, like, regional identity, injecting that into the more mainstream sort of, like, pop culture. Yeah, I just think it's cool. It's such a parallel kind of, like, approach to just musical expression. It's wonderful. So yeah, like, much like these UK artists kind of, like, utilise their regional accents or just their vocabulary in general to express their identity, like, Ken uses Bisaya to express his own identity, and, you know, it's a parallel approach to celebrate one's roots, one's lived experiences, and yeah, just kind of, like, bringing a little bit more diversity into the mainstream. Yeah, so, like, for this reason, from his, like, what's it called? Complex? His Complex EP, like, my favourite from that is Mic Test.
Mic test, as I don't mind this. I move it like this.
Like, Mic Test is so very clearly, like, Bisaya pride. And it kind of reminds me of, like, a Bisaya festival. I know that there's a lot of, like, festivals in the Visayas, but, like, the beat of it, the energy of it is so very Bisaya. And I really do appreciate it. And it's such a fucking good tune. Similarly, if we're talking, like, Filipino artists, if you think about, let's say, like, Easy Mill, I know that he predominantly does music in English and Tagalog, but even with, what's that song called? Panalo, I think it's called. Even with that, he introduces, like, Ilocano, where he's from. And also, if we think about, like, my favourite Easy Mill, I guess, like, mainstream song is Dalawamput Dalawang Oo. And that, while being in Tagalog, if you look at the themes, if you look at the music video, it's very, very Ilocano. Like, he talks about places where he grew up. He, you know, has his family in the music video. He has verses where it's like he discusses the perception of Ilocano people to, like, non-Ilocano people. So, much like Ken uses Bisaya to kind of express himself in his artistry, like, Easy Mill does the same, I think. Again, I am a stupid idiot who is so far removed from the Philippines that I could be talking shit. But I'm just saying, these are the thoughts that came into my head. Also, Easy Mill made me finally pick up my copy of Gapo. Yeah, just because he's so proudly Ilocano. That was like, you know what, I have a book about that experience. Maybe I will read it. It's good so far. And also, it's a classic Filipino piece of literature. So I'm glad to have started reading it anyway. Again, back to this topic making me anxious. It's 2025 and it just needs to be addressed. I want to talk about like cultural sensitivity, why that even matters, and kind of like my way of navigating that minefield. So even with me, like at this point in my life, I'm pretty comfortable with like calling myself Filipino, but also calling myself Scottish, but then also like claiming to have a knowledge of like German culture, French culture, other different cultures of like languages that I've studied. Like I'm quite comfortable with that. However, with this being such a sensitive topic, there's still so many nuances of cultural identity that I need to educate myself on. I think it's why I got really anxious like talking about this, because like, you know, YouTube is such a public space that I wasn't even sure if I should be talking about it. So again, I'm so far removed from the Philippines and like I don't really go home that often. I'm hoping to go maybe for a good few months, a couple of years, but right now that's not realistic for me. But yeah, so like, who the fuck am I? Why do I have all the shit to say? I'm so conscious of that it's actually giving me anxiety. But again, I've done my due diligence. I've checked with my cousins. They live in Iloilo. So I asked them if it's even appropriate for me to be like partaking in this like Bisaya conversation. Or like speaking about Bisaya culture when all I know is like Hiligaynon. But yeah, with what they told me, I think it's okay for me to talk about it. Like, again, I'm not generalizing. I have my own specific experience. People from there and who grew up there have their own specific experiences, but this is just from my perspective. Don't take anything I say seriously. That is the biggest disclaimer that I can give you. Earlier in the evening, I was speaking with people from, I think they grew up here as well, kind of like me, but their background is from Zamboanga, from Negros, from I have friends here who speak Ilocano, and obviously me and my sister are like half Ilonggo. I want to be conscious and I want to be respectful. This whole cultural sensitivity, cultural appropriation issue, I think it's just a matter of being respectful, making sure that when you're trying to talk about a topic, it's more to celebrate and to uplift rather than to make something like a punchline or the butt of the joke, or to kind of, I don't know, use something as a caricature, because that's just not on. That's when it becomes cultural appropriation, I think, when you're using something to your advantage without paying that respect, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's always important to kind of fact check, to learn, to kind of like grow, and to always be aware that culture is such a personal thing and it's part of someone's identity that you can't just piecemeal it to, you know, bits and pieces, because like, again, like regional identities are so rich and complex. Like even in Scotland there's, you know, there's Glaswegian, there's Aberdonians, there's people from the Highlands, there's people from like all sorts of different islands in Scotland that like I can't claim to be able to speak about those identities and those experiences, but as someone who's highly aware of these topics, I think kind of find like a common thread that unites like a Scottish identity. So again, with this interview as a jumping off point, I think there should be more regional identities and different languages shared or spoken within the mainstream Filipino media, especially because, again, like the Philippines is so diverse linguistically that representation always matters. It's always nice to see someone talk about the things that you care about, talk about the things that you've experienced, and it should be not kind of like appropriated in a way that makes it a caricature. It should always be about like respect and appreciation, and not just like for entertainment purposes. So I don't want to speak out of turn. I have a specific like grow up experience as a Filipino, as a Scot and as someone who has studied languages, I don't want to claim to be able to speak on behalf of all of these other people whose words are probably more important than mine. Because again, I'm just talking shit, man. I'm just talking shit from a country 7 hours behind the Philippines.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
By the way, speaking of 7 hours behind the Philippines, I was up at 3:30 and I managed to catch the premiere of the Damn music video. As someone who has studied medieval French and medieval German and also loves fantasy, that music video blew my mind. I still think it's a fever dream. I've watched it so many times. I've listened to the song multiple times. Again, I'm doing my bit. Going back to the interview, another favourite section of mine is when they started doing the rhyming game in Bisaya.
Sa unsay man ning gitawag nga, lyrics lang ka Bisaya ko.
Whoever came up with it is genius, because you can kind of like tell both of them, or at least like Ken, you can tell he was like enjoying that exercise, and also the host was like so good. She was so quick on her feet.
Kung imong lolo grabe ka mangtas, pues ako sigig baktas.
And I love her so much. I think she should be the host of all talk shows moving forward, because she's so great. I love her.
Likod, asa tong atubangan? Kay likod man, likod.
I don't even know anything about her, but I love her. So yeah, I have been speaking for like a half hour, I think. I don't know how long this video is going to end up being when I go on to edit it, but I feel like I've spoken for longer than the interview actually lasted. But too long, didn't watch. I think it would be great if all regional cultures and kind of like languages or families of languages were kind of like represented in mainstream Filipino culture, because again, representation is so important, and like having those identities be represented, like it's not a way to kind of like be divisive or separate people out from kind of like us versus them or things like that. I think it will help in kind of just like strengthening the overall Filipino identity and kind of like actively celebrating each and every single part of the Philippines and not just, you know, a specific region, I guess. I'm going to get off my soapbox now and finish my bottle of wine. I don't think I spoke any Tagalog, any Bisaya, any Hiligaynon or Karaya in this video. I still hope that I was able to get my point across, and mabuhay ang kulturang Pilipino! Let's celebrate all of it. If you enjoyed my rambling, please give a like, and also please comment down below what your background is. If you're Filipino, what your background is in terms of regional identity. It could be your, you know, your mom's side, your dad's side, or if you don't have any like relation to the Philippines, if you're just coming at it from like a non-Filipino perspective, like what do you know about the Philippines that you want other people to elaborate for you? Or what are your assumptions about the Philippines that you might want to get corrected? Yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed, and I'm going to go drink my bottle of wine now and terrorise my dog. Also, speaking of regional identities and Filipino stuff, SB19, please do some stops in Europe, and also stop by Glasgow, because I need to see you guys in the Barras or Kintuts, and it needs to be in kilts. I'm just saying, it needs to be in kilts. Also, happy birthday to my sister on Sunday. I love you. I'll see you for dinner. Bye!